What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 10 must-add waiver wire targets heading into week 4 of the NFL season. These are going to be players that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN waiver wire. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Questions, comments, feel free to drop them down below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Now, we're going to start off actually with an exception here because this player is not rostered in under 40% of ESPN leagues, but we got to talk about Trey Benson, and I'm just going to go through this briefly. If he's out there, he has to be the number one priority pickup. Unfortunately, James Conner going to be out for the season with an ankle injury. All of a sudden, you now have Trey Benson stepping in. He's going to be the clear-cut RB1 for the Cardinals. Year 2 player, day 2 pick. He could definitely be the future of the running back position here for the Cardinals. So he's rostered in like 55% of leagues on ESPN. If he is potentially out there, I definitely think he is worth, the priority pickup. Then the next player I want to talk about, someone who's actually rostered in under 10% of leagues. This has been my guy throughout the offseason, someone who I really liked as a late round dart. It is Luther Burden. He's rostered in 9.3% of leagues. He goes out, has a breakout week 3 targets, 3 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Also had 1 carry on the ground for 7 yards. Now, I do not think that Luther Burden is someone who you can go out and confidently start in your lineup heading into week 4. His overall usage was still not great, actually pretty poor. 29% snap share, 31% route participation. As of right now, he does not have a full-time starting wide receiver role here for the Bears, but Ben Johnson came out, talked about how he wanted to get him more involved. The flea flicker, like the long highlight touchdown, that was specifically set up to go to Luther Burden. So Ben Johnson wanted to get him more touches. Luther Burden came through on those opportunities. He's a talented player, early round 2 pick. I think he'll continue to grow on his role. And I also just think this Bears offense has shown some nice flashes. I mean, really impressive passing day here in week 3 against the Cowboys. And so they should get better throughout the season. Luther Burden's going to get more involved. I do think this could be like the clear number 1 sign of the Luther Burden breakout. And if he's still out there, he's someone that I've talked about, like he should still be stashed even if his usage isn't great. Now is going to be the time because his, ownership percentage is going to absolutely skyrocket after this big game. Then I want to talk about Kareem Hunt. I believe I talked about him last week, rostered in 31.6% of leagues. This is not like a super flashy pickup, but you look at this Chiefs running back room, and Isaiah Pacheco is going to be rostered in the vast majority of leagues, pretty much every single like normal sized league. And the usage between these two are just very, very similar. Kareem Hunt, 23 carries, 5 targets over 3 games. Isaiah Pacheco, 25 carries, 6 targets. Kareem Hunt ends up getting the touchdown opportunity in week 3. Now, this Chiefs backfield is gross. The run game is bad, but Kareem Hunt at this point just has a very solid like baseline usage where you can count on him pretty much splitting this backfield 50-50. So do I love starting him in my lineup? No, you're kind of just praying for a touchdown because the efficiency is probably not going to be there and he's not going to be overly involved as a pass catcher. But with injuries, bye weeks coming up, like you could do worse than Kareem Hunt as just like a desperate play at the running back 2 spot or a potential flex option. Now let's transition into talking about a rookie wide receiver in Elic Ayomanor, someone who I've talked about after the first 2 weeks in my waiver wire videos. He's rostered in 21.1% of leagues. Week 1, he doesn't have a great stat line, but he commands 7 targets, had a solid route participation. He goes out week 2, 4 receptions, 56 yards and a touchdown. Week 3, another solid game, 4 receptions, 38 yards and a touchdown. Now, in terms of like being a startable fantasy option, I don't think he's there yet. He's had back-to-back strong fantasy days, but that's getting buoyed by touchdowns. I believe he is the only wide receiver on the Titans who's even caught a touchdown pass. So it's not like he's going to have, an 100% share of the touchdowns. This passing attack isn't good enough to trust him on a weekly basis. But it is notable that a day 3 rookie is already producing. He's getting starting wide receiver routes. He is second on the team in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, only behind Chigo Okonkwo, and he's like right there in pretty much all 3 of those categories. He's outproduced Calvin Ridley so far to start off the season. So this is definitely a player that might be more of like a second half option in terms of actually being startable in your lineup. But you guys know how I feel about these young players. When they start to flash the talent, they start to break out. You want to take notice of it, and you want to get these guys on your roster. Another young player here, a rookie, Harold Fannin Jr., just made the cut. He's rostered in 39.4% of leagues. And this was actually kind of a step down from Harold Fannin, both in terms of production and usage. He only had a 53% route participation, 4 targets, 3 receptions for 25 yards. And this was the first game of the season that David Njoku actually outproduced him. This is not, me fading off of Harold Fannin Jr. He's still a very talented young player. The usage is kind of odd because he was very productive through 2 games. It seems weird that he gets kind of a bump down. Seems like it was more likely he would continue to kind of expand on his role. But, you still have the upside of Njoku getting traded. This could just be like a weird thing where they reevaluate it after, they watch the film and be like, all right, we need to get this guy out on the field more. Definitely someone who's worth a roster spot. And if you are desperate at tight end, I still think he's someone that you can pick up, be kind of a desperate play at the tight end spot. And then a third straight rookie here, we have Woody Marks, who's rostered in 8.9% of leagues. And we saw him kind of close the gap with Nick Chubb. He took 30 snaps to Nick Chubb's 33. Didn't have, a huge role, 5 carries, 2 targets, but he had a 37% opportunity share of this backfield. Nick Chubb, I obviously don't think is the long-term answer here for the Texans. The Texans clearly liked Woody Marks throughout the draft process, traded a future day 2 pick for him. He's starting to improve on his role. Once again, these young players, they start to expand their usage. We should take a, nice look at them. And someone who, could potentially become the most valuable running back in this backfield without an injury. That's not the case for a lot of these running backs that are on the waiver wire. So Woody Marks, I think definitely worth a pickup. Then we have a couple of tight ends. I think one who's more of an immediate play, another guy that's more of a long-term option. We'll start off here with Brenton Strange, rostered in 21.3% of leagues. And through 3 weeks, he's averaging 8.9 PPR points per game. And that's without, scoring a single touchdown. He had a very nice week 3, 7 targets, 6 receptions for 61 yards. Now he had a 73% route participation. That's fine. That's nothing crazy. I think he's kind of an interesting player because he has been, fairly productive to start off the season. But you also look at this Jags passing attack and specifically the wide receiver room. The Jags wide receiver room is kind of in shambles at this point where it's coming into the season, you're expecting BTJ to be this stud, pick up where he did last year. You have Travis Hunter coming in. You think he's going to make an impact. And through a few weeks here, BTJ has been super underwhelming. The Travis Hunter usage has been very odd and all over the place. It's I kind of thought it was just coach speak when they're talking about oh, we're still kind of working out our usage for him. We're still kind of, putting the pen to paper on a plan for his usage. But it kind of seems like that's the case. It's been all over the place through 3 weeks. Week 1, he's pretty much a full-time wide receiver. Week 2, he's splitting. Week 3, he's barely involved on offense early on in the game. It's been weird. And so my overall point and why I bring that in here is Strange is a young player, so you do think he's someone who could kind of build on his production throughout the season. But I also think there's kind of this early window where the wide receiver room is still kind of clunky and they don't really have things figured out, where maybe he could emerge as a super solid weekly tight end option. So that's kind of the case here for Brenton Strange. I think, best case scenario at this point, he's more of a high-end tight end 2. But obviously the tight end position, George Kittle's banged up. You've got some guys that were drafted early on who've really flopped so far. So if you need a tight end, Strange could potentially be that guy, especially in the short term. And then a tight end who I mentioned is more of a long-term option. It is Oronde Gadsden, and he's someone who I really liked as a late round 4 dynasty dart, someone to kind of add onto your taxi squad. He made his NFL debut here for the Chargers in week 3. He was a healthy and active week 1 and week 2. And typically if you're a healthy and active, once you actually, get out on the field, you're not going to have a huge role. You're not going to be super involved. But Oronde Gadsden, in his debut, gets targeted 6 times, catches 5 of them for 46 yards. And so when you look at that overall usage at the tight end position, you're probably thinking wow, he played a pretty big role, had a decent snap share, and that really wasn't the case. He only played 24% of the snaps, had a 26% route participation. He just completely made the most of his opportunities. The dude only ran 14 routes, was targeted on 6 of those with a 43% target rate. He's a round 5 rookie tight end out of Syracuse. He's got this interesting kind of background where he started off as a wide receiver. So first 2 years at Syracuse, he was a wide out. Then he transitioned to tight end. So he definitely has more of this wide receiver skill set. He's a very impressive pass catcher. The Chargers really have had a hold at the tight end position, especially just in terms of someone who can be like a solid, reliable pass catcher. And it seems like Gadsden could come in and fill that role. One thing I really like about the Chargers is just how consolidated their targets are. Like at the wide receiver position, the targets are going to three dudes. It is Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, and Ladd McConkey. And then this game, it was Oronde Gadsden who commands 6 targets. And then you have the running backs, where I think Hampton also commanded 7 targets. So like the targets are really locked in. You could see Gadsden start to improve on his role. I mean, if you get 24% of the snaps and you turn that into 5 for 46, like it seems like you might want to get more opportunities for this guy. So he's only rostered in 0.1% of leagues, especially in deeper leagues. I do think he's worth a pickup. A player who I liked coming into the season, more from like a long-term perspective, but already making an impact in his first NFL game. We're going to have a few more players here. We'll start off with Chris Rodriguez Jr., rostered in 1.6% of leagues. This Commanders backfield is just really, really gross. I know a lot of people out there are really high on Bill Krosky-Merritt. They thought this was going to be the breakout, and I did think he'd be a fine play this week, but it really is just a three-headed monster here where you have McNichols kind of stepping into like the Eckler light role where he's taking third downs, the 2-minute drill snaps, and then you just have JCM and C-Rod like splitting the early downs, splitting the goal line stuff. Chris Rodriguez actually led the team with 11 carries. He only played 1 fewer snap than Bill Krosky-Merritt. And so I don't think Chris Rodriguez is like a solid weekly start. But with injuries, bye weeks, I do think you could make the case that like in a plus matchup, he could potentially be like a desperate starting option. But as of right now, it's like tough to get excited about any of these Commanders running backs. Then I have Miles Sanders rostered in 4.6% of leagues. And this Cowboys running back room kind of shifted from just like a Javonte workhorse role to much more of a committee where Miles Sanders logged 9 carries, 3 targets. He had 44% of the opportunities in this backfield. He's been, a pretty solid handcuff option, but I did think he was kind of at risk to potentially losing the RB2 job to Jaden Blue. It seems like they're fine getting Sanders more involved. If this does really turn into like if he's consistently getting 45% of the running back opportunities in plus matchups, he could end up being a desperate play. And then a couple more guys here to close us out. I did want to mention Tre Tucker. I mean, it seems weird not to. Rostered in 2% of leagues, went out, just had a nuclear week 3, 8 receptions for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, I'm pretty much mentioning him to like give him a shout out, but to also say, like, I'm not trying to burn my priority waiver spot or a ton of fab on Tre Tucker. I'm really not expecting him to be a strong weekly option. Like, I'm still viewing Bowers and Myers as the clear-cut top 2 targets. It was a huge game. It was a huge breakout. It was cool to see, but in terms of being like a long-term fantasy option, I'm just not really seeing it. And then I want to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, who, like, his roster percentage just continues to drop. I guess maybe more and more injuries if you can no longer hold him on the IR spot. But his roster percentage is down at 37.3. Obviously, he's coming off the torn ACL. We're not quite sure when he's going to return, maybe like week 6, 7, 8 area. But for Brandon Aiyuk, I do think he's worth a pickup, especially if you can just, add him on to the IR spot. Just too talented of a player to be sitting out there on waivers, especially like we've seen, especially as medicine continues to develop. Like, these guys can be more and more productive right off of these major injuries. So if Brandon Aiyuk's out there, I do think he's worth an ad. But that is going to wrap it up for my top targets heading into week 4. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.